Carl and Liam here from Games, Brains and Head-Banging Life, gbhblofficial for short, and it's getting goosebumps as we return to a beloved Goosebumps character for his worst episode yet. Don't at me on that. Don't disagree with me. I'm 100% right. Not only do I think this is the worst episode for Slappy the Dummy, I think it's one of the worst episodes I've seen in the show overall. It shouldn't exist. It's pointless. It's dumb. But it is Bride of the Living Dummy, the 16th episode of season 3 and the 60th episode overall, directed by Randy Bradshaw, written by Ron Oliver. This is not a short story. This is the second book in the Goosebumps series 2000 and the fourth book in the Living Dummy saga. It was first published in 1998 and received the classic Goosebumps reprint in 2018 as a tie-in to the film Goosebumps 2 Haunted Halloween. Unlucky fans of that movie who don't want to pick this up. You got duped. The Living Dummy series has been a mess throughout this show. And part of that came from the fact that they went in with the second book, even calling it Night of the Living Dummy 2 as an episode and never using number 1. Obviously, Night of the Living Dummy 3 was a two-parter in the previous season and was a high point, as much for the cast as the story as well. But it was one we were both quite positive about. So although I saw Bride of the Living Dummy, I thought, okay, all right, we're doing that, e.g. Bride of Chucky stuff and all that. I thought, well, that has potential, even from a younger kid angle. But fuck me, there was no effort put in this. I don't know how you feel about it.
Yeah, it's just, going into it, the idea of watching another slappy dummy-based episode, I feel like they've just done everything there is you can do with that idea. I don't know if, like, R.L. Stine, I suppose when he wrote these books, you can never know what's going to take off and what's going to be something that people really, like, enjoy and want to see more of. And this was one of those things. I don't know if you agree at all, but, like, even growing up as a kid watching it, I never really understood why Slappy was such, like, why he's basically the poster boy for Goosebumps. Like, he when you say Goosebumps, even in the movies they made with Jack Black, it's all about Slappy. It's about this ventriloquist type dummy story, and I don't ever really understood why it is one that people associate, because like the episodes he's in on the whole are usually like average to bad for the most part.
Agreed.
There's one obviously, I think the third part with Hayden Christensen in it. That is probably like the only one that stands out as being pretty decent. But again, this repeats a lot of the same things that the other ones have done anyway. So yeah,
it also frustratingly reset so much that was done in 3. This is baffling. If there was a continuity, and the continuity was already questionable based off some of the events between 2 and 3, the continuity in this one is fucking shocking. And I will highlight some of that in the tidbits about it. But for now, the cast, we have Adriana Bendria as Gillian Zinman, Sophie Bennett as Katie Zinman, Wayne Robson as Jimmy O. James, Michael Vollins as Harrison Cohen, Karen Waddle as Connie Zinman, Philip Shepard as Bob Zinman, so an entire family there. And then we have Cathal J. Dodd as the voice of Slappy in this episode, and Juliussi Aguri as Mary Ellen, and that's a voice character as well. But we'll explain who Mary Ellen is.
Also, an interesting piece of trivia, because I had to look this up. Obviously, you mentioned Bride of Chucky. I looked up, and actually, this episode aired on TV, and I don't know when the book was written, but it aired on TV 8 months right before the Bride of Chucky movie was released. So take that for what you will, whether or not you want to believe that this was inspired by Bride of Chucky or vice versa, basically.
Yeah, it's hard because all of that will be inspired by old movies like Bride of Frankenstein. That's the thing.
It does go back to that, doesn't it? So.
Yeah, so basically the events of Night of the Living Dummy 3 are out the window here, except, and this is most notable by the simple fact that compare the ending to Night of the Living Dummy 3, where Slappy is struck by lightning and explodes. Remember that badass explosion? But in this, he's just fixed. He's perfectly fine.
Yeah, just pretty damn lazy. Like I said, I wonder, was R.L. Stine put under pressure to have to write another Slappy story, like to bring him back? And he was just like, you know what, I'll bring him back, even though he clearly, if that's the way the book ends as well, he was like definitive, no, this is the end of Slappy. Almost like he was saying, I don't want to write another Slappy story. And maybe people behind him were like, you got to do another one. He was like, I will do one. I'm going to do it lazy as hell. I'm going to explain how he's back. I'm going to make it look like really stupid, basically.
It's
Yeah.
just classic horror stuff, isn't it? Like, you know, here's the last Friday the 13th film. It's part 5. And oh no, turns out we've got a lot more to come after that. Maybe maybe it was. His publishers were like, listen, man, that shit's still really popular. You should write it. Your last couple of books haven't sold too great. Let's write a sequel. Isn't that kind of, I don't want to do this. I don't want to be too mean about it, man, but isn't that the reason why a book like Dr. Sleep exists, which of course is a sequel to The Shining?
I mean, of course, it's not like fair to just be like, oh, screw your R.L. Stein for doing that when how many authors or movie makers have done the same thing? Or, yeah, even like a band might bring out music that sounds similar to its classic style that people want to hear. So there's nothing wrong with that, you know?
No, I agree as well. It never would be too hard on R.L. Stein. He did create Goosebumps as well. But like another highlight as well is how slappy he is in this episode too. In Night Living Dummy 3, he's very tall. He's very long. In fact, he's kind of often the size of the kids as well. But in this episode, they reverted back to this almost small ventriloquist doll that's no bigger than a baby, really. And it's fine again because, hey, it is what it is. But the fact that this is billed as a sequel to that just irritates again.
Especially with how this episode ends and what happens to Slappy after he gets destroyed again, basically, how it goes. Yeah.
There are a lot of references as well to other Goosebumps in this as well. At a certain point in the episode, Kate and Harrison are seen watching a scary movie in the Zinnemans' living room. But that footage is actually from 3 previous episodes of the show. They are watching bits of The Scarecrow Walks at Midnight, bits of The Werewolf of Fever Swamp, and Welcome to Camp Nightmare, all rolled into one. Adriana Bendia, Gillian Zinman in this, also played Stephanie in the very good episode The Headless Ghost of season 2.
Indeed.
Did you recognize her?
Yeah, I did recognize her, but then I had to look it up I looked up myself what episode she was in, but yeah.
In a scene in Jimmy James's dressing room, a poster for Amazo from the episode Bad Hair Day is hanging above where Slappy is sitting.
It's always fun when you have those little Easter eggs to other episodes.
There were so many that I decided to not even include. Put this way, if you're like the kind of person that looks from this episode has more than any other episode I've seen. I haven't listed them all, but you could keep your eyes open. You'll see them all over the place.
Oh, okay.
It's a stormy night as we focus on some sort of tip, just some sort of rubbish thrown out, where a man named Jimmy, as we'll learn later, is looking through the trash. He finds a case, but it's padlocked. So he grabs a tool, and as he's trying to break it, lightning then strikes and hits the lock, which opens, and inside is Slappy. So this episode ain't hanging around at all.
Yeah.
Jimmy picks up the Slappy's activation card, you know, the one with the words, and the wind blows it away. He runs after it, catches, and then reads the words. And Slappy immediately comes to life and makes Jimmy an offer he can't refuse, because obviously kids famously will get a Godfather reference. Of course they will.
I did think it was quite interesting that they had an adult character be the one that brings Slappy back and interacts with this, you know, demonic creature or whatever, demonic ventriloquist doll. You know, like in Goosebumps episodes, you normally never see adults really see these things. They're normally the ones that are like so clueless and have no idea what's going on. So I thought that was at least refreshing in some way.
It was actually a whole refreshing start, because after that I was like, oh good, we've not gone for the usual route where Slappy gets brought to life and then he sneaks around and does the usual nonsense. I was like, okay, we're doing something different here. And at least I felt that's what we were doing.
Me too, and I was hoping, like, you know what, this could be cool, an episode where we don't have a group of annoying children, but no, alas.
No, not indeed. But you talk about filler. This episode has a lot of filler, and a great example is in this opening. What the fuck was the point of going, right, what we'll do is the card will blow away, you'll chase it for 5 seconds, then pick it up and read the words anyway. Why? What was the point of that? It's literally like, oh, that'll give it the extra 10 to 15 seconds padding we need. And if we do that several times throughout the episode, we'll get an extra couple of minutes.
Yeah, I have no clue. That's definitely just time waster, clearly.
Caru, Larry, Odona, Loma, Olanu, Carano.
Hello, Jimmy. What's a nice boy like you doing in a place like this? Hmm?
What?
Not Who? My name's Slappy, and I'm gonna make you an offer you can't refuse.
Indeed. So we then cut to some time later, and Jimmy and Slappy have started a ventriloquist show and apparently are packing out theaters with kids and adults alike, absolutely loving it. Like, this is on par. You've seen Home Alone? Well, yeah. Have you seen Home Alone 2?
I have.
Right. So you know the bit in that where Buzz is messing around behind Kevin, and Kevin's singing his song, right?
Yes.
And that audience are laughing like they are watching the funniest thing in the world. Like, they are killing themselves with laughter. This is what this reminded me of.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, the Slappy jokes are very, like, you know, super basic, and I guess that's the kind of comedy that tickles that particular audience. I don't know.
Yeah, because the shtick is basically Slappy insults saying some stolen stuff to the audience, but really child-friendly, tame. Oh, you know, they've got a booger on their face, that kind of shit.
To be fair, this was back in the 90s where we had nothing. We just, like, rubbed two stones together to entertain ourselves. We didn't have, like, devices and stuff like that. So it makes more sense if you look at it that way.
Good point, good point. But Slappy ends up zoning out when he sees a girl doll in a specific seat. And after the show, the owner of this door, a young girl named Katie, is leaving with her older sister, Gillian, and a very confusing character named Harrison that I initially thought was a brother or related, but is credited with a different last name. And after watching the episode, there's no reference to him being any part of the family. So I could only presume he's a friend, but then I couldn't work out who he was a friend of. Because age-wise, he doesn't fit with any of the other girls. He's too old to be a friend to Katie, too young to be a friend to Gillian. I was baffled by this character.
That's actually very true. And anything, I think maybe he's a cousin, maybe? I don't know.
Never said. And I pay attention because I've got to write notes.
Well, I don't know about you and this episode on the whole, but I don't know how I feel about Slappy feeling horny. I don't know how I feel about that.
Well, I was fine with it up to the ending, and then I think it gets a little weird. But we'll get to that. But so Katie notices that her doll, Mary Ellen, is gone and starts to freak out. The others try to calm her, but she says that Mary Ellen threatened her with violence if she ever lost her. I was like, okay, that's cool. I like the idea of this doll threatening her. So she runs back into the auditorium to find her. Now, this episode will go out of its way to suggest that Katie speaks to Mary Ellen and Mary Ellen speaks to her, while everybody around her dismisses it. Now, here's the problem with this. We, as an audience, are aware that dummies, puppets, are alive, can come to life in the case of Slappy. So immediately I'm like, well, obviously she's alive. Obviously she is.
Yeah.
There's no mystery there.
That's true, that's true.
Gillian goes looking for her, ending up backstage where she overhears Jimmy and Slappy arguing. The former revealing that he's enslaved Jimmy as part of their act. You know, Jimmy, you'll get this out of it, but you'll be doing things under my whim. Gillian, listening in, leans on the door too hard and falls into the room. Slappy immediately turns back to being a dummy, and Jimmy plays the argument off as part of his new act.
50-50! I'm sick and tired of being treated like a slave all the time.
But you are my slave, Jimmy. You are. And you aren't ever gonna be anything but. So let me give you some free advice, partner. When old Slappy tells you to do something, you better do it.
Did like that. Really clever cover.
Yep.
Gillian asks Jimmy about Katie, but he's not seen her. He thinks she wants an autograph, but she doesn't. So Gillian leaves, but not before giving this complete stranger her home address.
Again, it was the 90s, and lots of children got kidnapped in the 90s for these exact reasons.
Yes. Arriving back at front, she finds Katie with Harrison and a doll, and apparently Mary Ellen wanted to meet Slappy, hence why she disappeared. There you go. At home, Gillian tells her father that dinner is ready, and we find out that he's attempting, but this might be the best part of the episode, actually. He's attempting to beat a world record for most birdhouses built. And we get even a shot of a wall of just birdhouses, all exactly the fucking same. It is weird.
Clearly, Dad has gone insane, and I think him trying to break the record for the most birdhouses created has to be the weirdest, most unexplained part of Goosebumps episode ever. And I think by saying maybe it's the best part of the episode is an understatement. It is the best part of the episode, because I think the only reason they did it is to establish that there's a saw blade down there that will come and play a part later, and that's just so random. You've got to love it.
Absolutely. But I love it particularly because it just created imagination in my head. I was like, wow. So I in my head, I devised massive marital problems between him and his wife, where they're not having sex anymore. They don't love each other. He spends his time in his basement working on his birdhouses. She's grown to hate those birdhouses with such a passion that when they eventually get divorced, she's going to try and take them off him in the divorce settlement just to spite him and then smash them up, create a bonfire. Man, brilliant stuff, Goosebumps. That's what I want. Send my imagination on this mad track.
They didn't know what they had. That's why I would say.
The doorbell then rings, and all the family weirdly convene at the door to see a big package addressed to Gillian. They open it, and Slappy is inside, including a letter that apparently came from Jimmy, basically giving Slappy to her. So yes, we've now reverted to what we didn't want, which is Slappy in a house with some kids, and we're just going to go that route.
Damn it.
Indeed. But Gillian doesn't really like the look of Slappy. She should take Slappy into the basement where Katie and Mary Ellen are waiting. Katie claims that Mary Ellen is mad as she wants Slappy to stay upstairs in their bedroom. And yeah, all right, even I was going, really? Are we really doing this?
Yeah.
Okay.
I couldn't believe they didn't do a got wood joke at some point in this episode. I mean, it's right there. Come on.
And it would have probably gone over most kids' heads as well. So for the adults, we could have been like, nah, brilliant. But Gillian doesn't care what Mary Ellen thinks and insists that Slappy is staying in the basement. So he bites her. She frees her hand and dismisses it as something Jimmy has built inside Slappy before heading upstairs with Katie. Now, they can get away with this because during the argument with Slappy, Jimmy and Slappy, and when she goes into the room, falls into the room, he throws it off as suggesting that he had built this device inside Slappy that would make Slappy more interactive. So that's how she comes back around to it. But I don't know, man. That's a stretch to have it bite. I'm not necessarily going to think you think it's alive, but you might certainly think it's damaged and dangerous.
Katie, get this thing off me! Katie, help me! Get this thing off me! You and Mary Ellen were a big help.
I thought she was just like overreacting and just like, you know, he's a ventriloquist doll, so obviously his mouth flaps open and closed and stuff like that. So maybe the mouth had just clamped down on her just by closing, and I thought maybe she just overreacted basically, and that was my explanation anyway.
Good enough. Who cares? Alone, Slappy sits up now. Then we switch to this night as Slappy does what Slappy always fucking does and causes a little trouble, leaving the basement, scaring the dog, which briefly wakes up Gillian, and we then see Slappy approaching her bed. Forget that though.
Yeah, but this is the reason why Slappy sucks. It's because I mentioned it before on a previous episode. Is he just isn't capable of doing anything truly evil or sinister because it's a children's show.
Yeah,
you know, it doesn't make any sense. That's why you can't have Slappy exist in a world where you have something like Child's Play, or you know, where you have a similar type character but that goes around stabbing and killing people. But then when you have Slappy, who basically goes around and leaves like feet prints on the ground and shit like that, it's so lame by comparison. I think that's the problem.
I agree as well. And I already knew as we fade to black to the next morning, I was like, well, it's going to be something lame, but it really fucking is. As Katie wakes up to find that Slappy is sitting on the dresser and with the words in lipstick or paint or whatever written, "I want my bride," written on the mirror. And oh my God, calm down, Slappy. You're pushing the boat here.
What is it?
I want my bride.
You little scamp, Slappy.
Indeed. Afterwards, Gillian is cleaning it off and blames Katie. And she's sick of hearing what Mary Ellen wants because all Katie does in this episode is Mary Ellen says this, Mary Ellen says that. And it does get really fucking tiresome.
Mm-hmm.
But Gillian decides she's going to send Slappy back to Jimmy. Before she can do that, though, the girls are called by their mother, who accuses them of messing with her jewelry and losing her wedding ring. So like, okay, you can again put that together as well. Well, obviously Slappy stole it.
Mm-hmm.
We then get more filler as she proceeds to explain how she's leaving for an aerobics class. I don't fucking care. Who cares?
But we are always saying, like, where are the parents? And they've written in a reason. So I appreciate that, but I did think it was really suspicious. And she said she's going for an aerobics class. Then she says she'll be gone all day. And I'm just like, okay, that's suspicious. That ties into your whole story about the birdhouse, is she's cheating on him. Oh my God.
It was, yep, you've nailed it. Exactly what I wrote in my notes as well, because she does say, I'll be back till late. And I was like, what the fuck? There you go. Yep, she's banging the aerobic instructor.
There you go. There you go.
But before she goes, she does state she hasn't seen the dog either. And it's like, okay, if the dog's not there, that's probably more of a concern. This isn't a cat that goes out for hours and hours, you know?
It's aerobics time, so.
Gillian is still planning to get rid of Slappy. So she goes to Jimmy's warehouse with the doll. How did she know where he lived? How did she know where he lived?
I guess when she gave her address, we missed there was a scene that got cut where he also gave his address, as a common courtesy.
Sure. Jimmy startles her, though, and reveals that Slappy is evil and that he forced him to send a letter and a case. And he's got no interest in taking Slappy back, demanding that she take him away. But she flat out refuses. I did actually admire the fact that her response to that is basically, get fucked. And she opens it up, but inside, the dog.
Look, I just spent half of my babysitting savings to get here in a cab, and I'm not leaving until you take this stuff. What?
At the house, Katie and Harrison are watching horror and getting frightened of it. The phone rings and Katie answers. It's Gillian who tries to warn Katie about Slappy, but it's too late as Slappy then cuts through the call and then locks Harrison in the bathroom. So, yeah, horror. Katie goes back to the living room to find Mary Ellen gone as Slappy now switches the power off. Katie then tries to let Harrison out, but the key is gone. Hearing Slappy, she runs to the bedroom and asks Mary Ellen where Slappy is. She then sees a shadow come up the hallway, tries to close the door, but it's pushed open by Gillian, who got there really fucking quick. If you time it from the phone call to now, it's like 2 minutes.
That's fast.
All. Gillian grabs Katie, who grabs Mary Ellen, and they attempt to escape, but Slappy blocks their route, demanding his bride. Now, bear this in mind, folks. All he ever says is, give me my bride. I want my bride. There's a reason. They end up in the basement, as Katie keeps insisting that Mary Ellen won't let her leave as she wants to stay with Slappy. Having had enough, Gillian grabs Mary Ellen, who now comes to life. What? Shocked face.
All right, Katie, that's it.
Be careful. Don't make her angry.
I've had just about enough of this dumb doll.
Who are you calling dumb? Ugly. I told you.
She's alive, too.
Aren't you the smarty pants? Tell her, Katie. Tell your big sister the truth.
Apparently, according to Katie, Mary Ellen has always been alive and is evil. Gillian and Katie are now trapped between Slappy and Mary Ellen. Slappy reveals that he stole a wedding ring so that they could get married. And Mary Ellen, man, she is like, oh, she is so overjoyed. She is hot for Slappy. But turns out Slappy has eyes on someone else. He isn't interested in Mary Ellen at all. He wants Katie, the youngest girl, the literal child, to be his bride. And I was just like, what the fuck? Did you feel like you needed to put a twist in for some stupid reason and you thought this would work? Now, I know it's absurd, and I'm not saying it's weird because it's a puppet and a child and all of that, but it's fucking weird because Katie's like 7 or 8. Slappy is established what he is. It's just weird, but it's also fucking pointless. I hated it. I hated it.
It's just such a strange direction to take it. They should just at least stuck with the whole Slappy and Mary Ellen thing. They could have done a silly, like, wedding with them and stuff like that. Could have been some cool puppetry at work and whatnot, but it seems like just a lazy direction to go. And like you said, it's just pointless anyway.
Ready to be your bride.
What? You? I don't want you, you cheap plastic. I want her. You will be mine, Kitty. You will be my slave forever.
I think it would have worked exactly as well, even with the end that this goes in, because you could simply had, well, yeah, but Slappy starts being rude and obnoxious to Mary Ellen directly afterwards, ordering her around, and then you could have done an empowerment thing because she'd been like, I'm not going to take orders from you, and then they fight, and the same thing happens.
Yeah, and we've seen before how the other puppets and stuff can turn against Slappy because of his like behavior and whatnot. So yeah.
Yep. So, but anyway, upon finding out that Slappy wants Katie, Mary Ellen goes all full on psycho on him and they fight. In the tussle, Gillian turns the power back on, which in one of the most incredibly dangerous acts of like fatherhood, parenthood, the saw comes on, the one that he uses to power the electric, which begs the question, that saw was already running when the power went off then, because it wasn't unplugged.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
I'm going to presume the father probably finding out that his wife was doing a late night aerobics class and was on his way to murder some people.
That might explain where they are. You know, I mean, that's it.
yeah, absolutely. But in the fight, Slappy and Mary Ellen then both fall on the saw and are cut into pieces. So that's it. Yep, there they go, dead again.
Brutal, man.
Yes, it is. Yeah, you kind of get weirdly like feathers and stuff flying up, and then we just cut to their like pieces cut up around the floor.
But Slappy literally exploded into dust before, so this is nothing, man.
Well, even less so, because we immediately see their entities leave and swoop around her briefly before disappearing. Gillian then picks up the wedding ring as Katie declares that she's getting too old for dolls. What? Yeah. But of course, we're not done yet. Finally, Gillian talks to Katie about what Jimmy said regarding the indestructible spirit of Slappy. I mean, forget that. We already know he's indestructible because of what we've seen in previous episodes.
That's why it makes such little sense from the episode before where he got blown up. Is like, then they could have shown the spirit of his doll as escaping. You know, that would have explained that, and maybe somehow he entered a different doll or something. You know, but they didn't do that. So
no, they did not. The door opens, but it's just the parents. Harrison then banging on the bathroom door reminds him that he's still alive, but from the vent in the bathroom, we then hear Slappy's laugh. The bathroom door is open, and when Harrison turns around, we see he's been possessed by the spirit of Slappy. And it is an effect.
Harrison? Sorry, folks.
Harrison doesn't live here anymore.
So what they've basically done is gone fake eyes over his real eyes to make it look like they're proper bugging out. And that's it. And it's he speaks in Slappy's voice, and that's it. That's how we end. And it's as shit as the episode is, as far as I'm concerned.
yes, indeed. There was one part you did miss, and it's when Harrison's looking in the mirror himself after he has just eaten a lot of food at dinner, and he says to himself in the mirror, he says, "Why did you eat so much?" And I just found that really relatable, man. We've all been there, right? We've all been there.
No,
But
you said it like I missed something really important. I missed that because I didn't. Yeah,
you like lean forward, like, what did I miss?
yeah.
That's quick. That's important. But yeah, I thought on the whole, it's another predictable Slappy episode. It does have a few new elements, but it's essentially the same as what we've already seen. It has a feel of been there, seen that, and don't need to go through that ever again. I don't think. It's just milked the concept dry at this point. Yeah. It's not necessarily bad by any means, but I think when you add in what we've already seen that comes before it, and it's just so mundane now. It's by far the most forgettable of the slappy outings, I would say.
So I've got stronger feelings in this. I think this is a terrible episode. I think it's pointless. I think it's the worst, easily not just the worst of the Living Dummy stuff, but easily one of the worst episodes I've seen overall, because it just feels so exhausted and tired and empty and lacking in interesting angles, an interesting resolution, and absolutely pointlessly weird twists and main characters that don't leave any impact on me at all. I mean, it's Goosebumps, 20 odd minutes long. They rarely do leave that much impact, but this was really, really light on these characters. And at best, when my imagination starts creating scenarios for around the parents, and that's not something I often do, because Goosebumps does tend to keep my concentration focused because I'm note writing. But my notes for that was some of the shortest I'd ever written, because I could just go, Slappy does what Slappy does, and know exactly what I mean by that when I'm reading them back.
Yeah, I think the best thing you can say about this episode, or the worst, is that you really could skip this episode, just skip past it, and you would be better for it, basically.
It's really odd, as you say, considering how important Slappy is in the book and the fact that he would be a major part, if not the main villain of the movies, the Jack Black movies, how in TV format, the dude has lacked in all the episodes overall. Because as much as we can praise what Night of the Living Dummy 3, that's in comparative to the other ones. Compare it to all the other episodes, many of the better episodes, it wouldn't stand up at all. So there's no really good ones.
It's also even strange because the previous episode with Slappy had more of like a cinematic feel to it. It was quite a lot. It was longer, wasn't it? I think, and also
Two parts.
And it had like a more of a budget. It felt like. So they went from that to this. It just feels like such a massive downgrade. Yeah, they just feels like they're really squeezing blood out of like a stone at this point. I definitely want to see no more Slappy, and I think that's when I found out that he was such an integral part of the movies. It just turned me off the movies almost as well, because Slappy's fine, but he's fine, and that's kind of as far as it goes, really.
Yeah, I will say, the movies at least did him better than most have done. So I will praise that part of there.
Grander in scale of what he's capable of doing. So that was nice.
Agreed. But that's it, folks. That is it. And this is where it starts to happen as we roll towards the end of the Getting Goosebumps series overall. There's no more mention of Slappy going forward. There are no more episodes to be done. This is his exit from the TV show. So we end on a low.
Can't imagine why they wouldn't want to bring him back for another episode after that one.
But there it is, Bride of the Living Dummy. You got any thoughts on it? You know what to do? Let us know in the comments.
Thank you very much for watching. If you liked what you saw, please help us out by giving us a thumbs up and hitting that subscribe button. If you really liked what you saw, consider donating to keep the website and channel running by buying us a coffee via our coffee page or picking up some merch from our Big Cartel store. You can check us out on gbhbl.com as well as via our social media, Facebook, Instagram and Twitter, as well as listen to our interviews via SoundCloud, Apple Music and Spotify. Just search for GBHBL. Games, horror and heavy metal. What else is life for?